I love the tripping over knowledge comment. I think that's just such an interesting way to formulate the importance of consumability of whatever knowledge you have, whatever answers you have. Before I get into my part of the agenda, I just want to say welcome to everyone. It's great to have you all here. And I'm really excited about the journey we are on now. More than ever before. I've been doing this for some time. And I'll tell you why I'm so excited. It's not very usual to have the opportunity to be part of a step change in society, as we are all in now for the last few years. And it's very early. Probably look back at it just like we looked at 1994, which was the first time the browser came along, commercially at least. But I think it's even bigger than that. I think it's at least as big as the microprocessor, the transistor, at least. Maybe bigger, we'll find out. I don't know if it's bigger than that. But what Gen AI is promising, and we are all in the journey, and I'm not going to make any claims on that, is to industrialize knowledge work. Something that has been really hard to do ever since knowledge work began, which was, let's say, about 100 years ago, when Frederick Taylor and his ideas of organizing factories and production, going all the way back to Ford and assembly lining, right? Industrialization of manufacturing has been on for over 100 years. And now we are just entering the era of industrializing knowledge work. And that's made possible by a unit of capability, which is a GPT, which is a large language model. We all understand, at least from the outside, what it is. It's a unit that takes natural language input, natural language, and produces natural language output, right? That's what that unit does. It may be very expensive, it may be very inexpensive, doesn't matter. That's the unit. And as that unit, or that component, if you will, gets better and better and better, the whole industry, the whole economy will consume it in many, many ways. And we are one of those consumers. You are one of those consumers. And that, to me, breaks down at this point into very simple things. The idea of industrializing knowledge work requires that you create specialization, right? That's sort of the origin of the Industrial Revolution. Specialization creates more productivity. But in order to specialize, we've been trying to do that with humans around knowledge work for a while, but you hit a plateau of productivity gains. Because if humans have to break down work and assembly line it all, the transfer and the handover costs are pretty high between humans, right? Of one specialized unit of work to another specialized unit. I'm talking about knowledge work. But with machines, you can drive that specialization and the interconnect much faster, much faster. And that creates a whole new order of productivity improvement. So for example, take a case of a piece of knowledge content. I'll make it real for us. And I'm sure many of our clients here who are here, and they'll kind of understand what I'm saying. Take a piece of content, it's written in PDF, it's been there for some time, it's a 100-page document. Now you need to create a consumable knowledge article out of that, which is written in a template that you recommend. It needs to follow all the right grammatical rules of grammar, et cetera. It needs to be branded the right way, et cetera, et cetera. If you took that task and tried to break it down for humans to do, knowledge work, there's only so far you can break it down. Because beyond a point, for example, there could be one small micro task in that says, take the entire article and turn it from passive voice to active voice. It's pretty straightforward. But would you hand it off to someone to say, just do that job and come back with having finished that job? Another micro task could be, oh, just look at all the acronyms and make sure that every time an acronym is used, it has been referenced or at least defined somewhere else before that. Simple. A human can do it. But can you really break down your entire journey of 20 micro tasks into 20 tasks for humans and have 20 people do it differently? The transfer costs, the handover costs are too high. So it never gets done that way, which means that one person inevitably ends up doing all those 20 micro tasks. And that means it's very slow. It takes a long time to do it. But if you broke that whole process into those 20 tasks, and you had specialist units, what I talk about, the Gen AI units, handling each of those micro tasks really well, you could string it together and boom, you got yourself a highly productive task that was done by stringing these things together. The reason I'm bringing it up is that's the journey we are on. That's a very simple use case. You can make it more complicated. You can make it more advanced and sophisticated. But that's the essence of the productivity gain that we are seeing in one half of the market. The other half is to make that answer more consumable, more interactive, easier to engage with. That's the front end, right? So between these two, the back end and the front end, Gen AI is impacting the industrialization, the whole automation of knowledge work in the economy. We are just a part of it. To me, that's super exciting. And the focus should be less on what that component is that from OpenAI or from Anthropic or from someone else? That's not as relevant. Just like it's not relevant who makes the transistor, who makes the microchip. What's important is what you're able to do with the microprocessors put together into a computing system with operating systems and tools on top of it. So what is going to be built on top of this foundation of automated knowledge work is where all of us play. Now, a couple of things to keep in mind. Over the last 2 years, I think it's almost been just about 2 years since ChatGPT was officially launched. Since then, the capability of Gen AI has gotten a lot better. All of you are familiar with it. Sorry. Hallucinations, which were a huge issue a year ago, they've pretty much been managed. It's not a real issue. You can control it pretty well. You can, in fact, push it up. You can push it down. There are all these levers that all the component builders have now put in place. And the costs are dropping very fast for that unit of capability, which is generative AI capability. Right? These three things will continue on. You can assume that that's the case. Now, what do you do with it? If all of that is happening, then we should be doing pretty well. How many people think we are really getting value now out of the Gen AI investments we have made? Anyone? Some? No? Okay. So all's not well. And the answer is in the question, obviously. And that is that understanding how well that fundamental foundation of Gen AI works doesn't necessarily imply that you can get full value out of it. And it comes from a simple observation, which we are all aware of, that Gen AI, at the end of the day, is an interpolation tool. It is going to work with what you give it. It interpolates an answer. It doesn't extrapolate an answer. You cannot give it garbage and get gold out of it. It doesn't work that way. And there are all these systems that are now being developed to try to figure out what is the quality of input that you can build in to train these GPT models. And so last year, around just about a year ago, a little over a year ago, Microsoft came out with this GPT model called Phi. How many of you have heard of it? PHI? Phi? No? Okay. So they came up with a very provocative title for launching it. And the title of that paper said, "Textbooks are all you need." Have you heard of that? Anyone? No. Very simple observation. What they said was they could get as good results with their GPT, which is the Phi model, using high-quality textbooks as input, as opposed to the World Wide Web, which has a different level of quality, we'll all acknowledge. So by using only high-quality textbook content, they were able to get the model to behave as well with a much smaller size and much less training, and yet give equally high-quality results. In fact, better than most of the other models out there, which are 20 times bigger, 50 times bigger in terms of billions of parameters. So the original one they did was like 2 billion parameters. And this was competing with parameters out there that are 80 billion, 500 billion, so on and so forth. Right? So it's very clear that that interpolation capability that GPTs do relies on high-quality content. The better the content that is fed into it, it's well understood, the better the answers. Especially since the hallucination parts are now taken care of. So that notion of quality, which was a big hullabaloo 2 years ago, is pretty much sorted out. Now it's about what's the quality of the answer. And to us, this is what we're dealing with now. This is what you're dealing with. This is what Linda's talking about. Knowledge fed into AI systems in a very tightly integrated, interdependent way is what is needed to deliver quality answers on the other end. Simple. So, AI, or I'll use AI generically rather than saying Gen AI every time. AI is amazingly valuable in improving the speed with which you can build and maintain knowledge systems. Of course, it still needs humans to contribute to the knowledge in the first place, but we'll get to that in a second. So that's one side of it. And the other side of it is that you need trusted knowledge to feed into AI systems to deliver good answers. That's it. That's the reason for the two to work together tightly at all times. If you don't keep that connection tight, you run into this problem. And that's the reason, as Linda said, a bunch of these companies that have started out had to hold back. A lot of tools that have been promising amazing gains recognize that without that trusted content coming from knowledge systems, AI is an interpolation tool. It's going to give you what you give it. It might look a little nicer, but it will essentially be the same quality. And so what we are doing is solving that garbage in, garbage out problem. And that's what you are solving. Now, you're being hounded and pounded by thousands of providers, all of whom are, I'm sure, really good AI providers. But very few people are acknowledging and solving this problem. And this problem says every large company has content silos, standing on the left side, the first column. And then they have specialist tools, because those specialist tools are needed, have been historically, to get the job done functionally. Some are virtual assistants, some are bots, some are search engines, some are KM tools sitting in CRM systems, whatever it is. All of them have their own version of the answer. And all of them are connecting into different touch points that customers or your employees are using. Chaotic. That causes, that causes a challenge in terms of conflicting answers. Conflicting answers is the biggest challenge for AI systems, because when AI systems are added on all these points, which is what is being done now, you get chaos. This is the problem you are solving. This is the problem we are helping you solve. And to us, the answer is very simple. Even Gartner's comment, and I don't know how many of you have seen this quote from Gartner. This is a research quote. They came out with it in June of this year. You have to read it carefully to realize how unusual it is. Now, Gartner is in the business of predictions. We know that. And one of the things they do very well is they never really tell you anything with great certainty, which is true because you're predicting the future. Now, this is unusual, isn't it? The percentage there is unusual. I have never, in my years of working, seen a Gartner prediction which has 100% written in it, ever. And what it's saying is very simple. If you do AI standalone without deep integration with a robust knowledge management feeding all the content, the trusted content, it's going to fail. That's all. They just say it in a better way. So in fact, now Gartner's worldview, they are evolving it very rapidly, and their worldview is organized around 3 layers of capability. I'll just give you a quick overview of that because it is relevant when we get into the next part of the discussion. At the bottom of it, the foundational layer, is the GPU stack, right? The NVIDIA world. So that's the base. On top of it are all the language model builders, starting with OpenAI and going through Anthropic and all the others, Llama and Mistral and all the rest. So core language model builders. And the third, which is interesting, they call it AI knowledge management applications. AI knowledge management applications, that's what they call it. And they explain what it is, and it's essentially what we are just talking about, what you are experiencing and dealing with today. That's what they're talking about. That layer that ensures that these models are being fed the right content, the right level of personalization and controls, the right centralization of content in the organization so that you can have a single source of truth. All those things are in the third layer. And that's, to us, the contention. Our contention is that you need a knowledge hub which is going to be managed and operated by AI and experts working together. Because it is true that AI is making the job of knowledge management much easier than it used to be. I'm not talking about the actual knowledge. That's not our business. That's your business. Our business is to help you take that knowledge and manage it and build it and make it available really quickly and easily. So the picture, simple picture, of a knowledge hub is you have all these different sources of content which are traditionally siloed in your organization, like Linda pointed out, right? SharePoint is pretty much the biggest knowledge repository out there because that's where all the content is sitting in most organizations. But it's also the most inconsistent and siloed. You have no idea what is correct. You have no idea what is relevant, what has expired. There's conflict and duplication all over the place. So you have to take all that content and make sure that you can bring it into a knowledge hub where your managers and authors working with AI tools can transform that content and create content that can be trusted. That's the knowledge that you want to then feed into your AI capabilities to deliver consumable answers on the other side. And so the idea that we realize that AI is a buzzword beyond the best we have seen, just like digital used to be and E used to be 25 years ago. But it's also very real. And you'll see why when you look at the products and capabilities, you look at what you're trying to do. It does pervade everything we do inside this knowledge hub, all the way from the way content is sourced through to the way it is created, it's curated, it's transformed, and the way it eventually gets found and published. Every step of it is informed and improved by AI. So it makes sense. It is AI knowledge, not just knowledge anymore. So a little view into what we see, and this is the human side. Again, Linda, thanks for pointing this out, because the human side is what really matters with knowledge. Until knowledge is consumed for value, there is no reason for it to exist. And so to us, it all is the thing we are hanging our hat on, and I think you look at as well, is what is going to deliver trusted answers. And a trusted answer has certain attributes, and I just think we can walk through this and understand how those attributes are brought out in a typical customer journey. And then you can see how the products and capabilities we are building and others are building can help toward those attributes, amplifying them and optimizing them in any customer engagement. So I'll just quickly run through this and then show you how it actually works inside a typical customer engagement. First thing, it has to be contextual. It has to be intentional. In other words, you need to understand the true intent of the user when they're engaging with your system to get an answer. They might say it one way, they might mean another. You want to establish that intent as well as you can before you go about answering it. It has to be a relevant response. It has to be explainable so that people should understand why you're giving them the answer if they want to know the reason behind it. That improves the trust. It needs to be we believe it has to be personalized, because when you think of a knowledge hub will be serving different audiences. An enterprise user who knows the insides of the organization might want to get information in a very different way than an end customer who might want a sliver of that information and may not want to know all the details, but may want to be served in a much more empathetic way. So personalization is super important for consumability and adoption. And then finally, collaboration. And this collaboration I'm putting in the context of service environments, customer service, enterprise service, field service, because that's where we see the biggest, at least from our standpoint, the biggest opportunity for eGain to help our customers in the market. We know those use cases, we know how to solve them, we know how to apply AI into the knowledge space to address those use cases. So let's just go through a quick picture of that. This is a simple loop, nothing complicated about it. You got the user on one end. The user goes through some sort of an omni-channel conversational interface, asks a question of any kind. That gets through, the knowledge base does its thing, comes back with an answer, comes out published. Okay. Now here's the thing that ensures that there are points where you can build trust in this journey. And the more you can show the ability to do that for users, you can enrich the experience along the way, the more you can create trust in the answer. Now, of course, at the heart of it, the answer has to be right. If the answer is not right, then it doesn't matter. But even with the right answer, sometimes users may not adopt it. And that's one of the big things with self-service nowadays. And this morning, Linda was referring to the session, and I was part of that as well. It was just really quite an intriguing conversation where several of you who were there talked about self-service as a big need and opportunity. And at the same time, the adoption of self-service hits a plateau, typically. In most organizations, I would say self-service has hit a plateau. And a lot of that plateauing has to do with the fact that there is that sense of assurance and trust that you want to generate may not be where it needs to be. And how can you improve that sense of assurance and trust so that people feel like after I'm done with my self-service journey and I got some answer, I'm not going to then say, hey, let me double check and just pick up the phone and call again. So we see this as kind of a way to enable these different attributes, the context enriching the request, the intention being clarified by the tool, the relevance being established and confirmed through guidance if needed, explainability brought out depending on the amount of information that can be made available to that particular user. And finally, personalizing that response back depending on the user, their profile, their situation, their sentiment. All of that collectively contributes to the trust that the user has in the system and the machine that is responding. This trust to us is where AI tools and AI technologies at this point are not up to mark, standalone AI tools. The assumption is, as long as I can throw some content into an AI engine, it'll find the interpolated answer, and that's going to do the job. Our experience working with you tells us otherwise. And we are seeing that in real details, right? We are seeing it in use cases. We are seeing it in benchmarks with your data and your questions. Understanding those questions better, understanding how to build trust in that journey is part of the innovation that we are putting together for you so that you can enable and configure that and ensure that you get trusted answers which are perceived as such. And then there is the feedback loop. This feedback loop is quite interesting because when you involve users in the co-creation or at least collaboration of, hey, you're listening to my feedback, that builds trust. And there's also an element of fun in it, right? If you can gamify it, service jobs are not easy. If you can gamify it, it's even more engaging. What's engaging is more trusted. It's like social media, right? Where I have a voice, I believe it. Like I said, doesn't take away from the fact that the underlying answer has to be right. That's true. We'll solve that problem too. But there is this concentric requirement around the core of correct answers, which is crucial to adoption and therefore business impact. So, quickly run to next kind of couple of things I want to cover. We at eGain find ourselves in the last couple of years in an amazing place because we have been very good with knowledge management tools and technologies and solutions. With the disruption of Gen AI, and we jumped into it. Interestingly, I don't know how many of you were there 2 years ago at our conference in Vegas. This was 2 years to the day, or maybe 1 day short. We announced a product called Instant Answers, and that was 2 weeks before ChatGPT announcement. So we can genuinely say that we have been doing the LLM stuff, at least for products that we present to you, before ChatGPT became popular. That is just to say that we have been early at it, not to say that we are the ones who invented it. We're just using the core technologies. But what we have found in that process is that the usability of this technology needs a lot more than just the ability to throw a bunch of content into a GPT engine. This is what we believe we can do. By the way, one person in the room should see herself in this. Kim, if you're here. Thank you. We didn't ask you for it, but this is from the Vegas event. You didn't say this. This is our words, but we just put you in the backdrop. We believe that businesses can reduce their cost of operation, service operation, by 75% while improving customer experience. Not immediately, but over a period of 3 years, we think that one can achieve that sort of cost reduction and experience improvement. And it's a combination of bringing together technologies, experience design, human factors, and of course, your ability to source and create knowledge. That is crucial to all this. And so what we are doing now is creating a kind of a layered approach of very obvious layers. At the core of it is our product, which is the eGain Knowledge Hub. That has to be implemented right. And we believe that that right implementation, that prescription, is something we have an approach that we are keen to execute, operationalize with all our clients systematically, because it does work very well. And it has a lot of detail to it, and you'll hear more about it in the sessions in the afternoon when our team gets up on stage. But the one thing I'll tell you about it is just the observation, and Linda said this already, I'll just say it again, that knowledge starts with a question. It doesn't start with content. As long as you keep that in mind, which is the central sort of insight that animates our knowledge method, which is the prescription we have for implementation, you get the results that we believe are possible. The product itself that we have now is what I would call very self-evident. There is nothing magical about our product, but it's all put together and works in a way that you would expect it to work. In other words, there are tools and capabilities to source different content sources, do it very easily from different content sources, whether it's SharePoint, or Confluence, or silos in Salesforce, or other CRM systems, or website, or PDF. Doesn't matter. We can suck all that in. And then the content workflows inside our hub that allow your authors and managers to work with AI tools, and we have a whole library of AI tasks and agents that we have built out. And of course, we keep adding to that. You can add your own. And that helps you in rapid transformation and creation of knowledge. And once that is done, then the ability to access it in a conversational way, which is something more than what we have had so far, and I'll talk to that in a second. And we think that is also a game changer because it fundamentally improves the self-service experience. Our customers, and many customers have now started to see benefits, but one of the customers who deployed our solution about a year ago, this is a utility company out of Europe. The part I want to hit here is that their knowledge build, which is on the right side, top right, that was sped up by 5 times. So what would have taken them 5 to 6 weeks got done in a week. And that speed up changes the game, because now you have quality content, you have trusted knowledge content, and all the AI tools on top of it just make things even better to deliver consumable answers. The knowledge method, which is the second layer, is also quite important in this. As I said, if you don't follow this method, in our opinion, if you go the usual way, which, by the way, one of our attendees this morning talked about a client that they're working with who has 60,000 articles, and they're just trying to bring all 60,000 articles into their new knowledge system. That's exactly what you don't do in the knowledge method. In the knowledge method that we prescribe, and again, you'll see more of it in detailed use cases later this afternoon, is you start with questions. You start discovering questions that matter. Not just, you don't even look at the long tail. You do the 80-20. But you have tools to do that. That's the key. Now, in our solution, you have tools. You have AI tools working with experts that help you source all those questions, sort them, canonicalize them, find the top star questions, look at it, rating them by value and volume and effort, and figuring out which ones you'll attack first. Once you've done that, then you work backwards into the sea of content that you have on the other side, and figure out which ones need to be pulled and transformed using AI and experts to give you the kind of knowledge content you need. And from there on, it's pretty straightforward, right? You apply your Gen AI capabilities, and that's the third part which I'm talking about, which is the match and deliver answers. That's something we think, again, there is a lot of opportunity to innovate. The last thing I want to mention is the program at the top of this product and process. And that is what we call the road to 75. This is our journey to get to the 75% reduction in customer service cost. And it's not a big secret. It's just the idea of applying, once you get knowledge built in your hub, apply it everywhere. Apply it across your organization, because remember, there is the ability to personalize. Without personalization, you cannot centralize. You try to centralize, it doesn't work for one user group versus another. That's the challenge with centralization historically. If you don't have, the architecture of content is not personalizable, then centralization doesn't work. You have to create duplicates with small variations. So with that, the ability to personalize, now you can have one knowledge hub for the organization, and you can have that knowledge serving all the touch points, in this case, that are service-oriented, all the way from proactive service through to self-service, and then to assisted service. And the front end of this, which is where we think the biggest bang for the buck is possible in terms of cost reduction, is self-service. Pretty obvious. And in order to do self-service, we are announcing this new capability, which many of you have seen, so this is not a secret again, but that's all right. The eGain AI agent. The eGain AI agent is a conversational tool which will reason over your existing knowledge in the eGain system or your PDF stores or your website. You can point to it. You can say, these are the things I want you to consider. Not exact details, but overall locations. And from there on, it's going to also learn from successful customer conversations. Now, those customer conversations could be coming from your CRM systems or coming from your contact center environment. You can learn from the successful ones, not from all of them. And the successful ones will then feed back suggested responses into the knowledge base. And our thesis is that that loop of learning from successful customer conversations needs to be a supervised loop, so experts need to review what gets added to the knowledge base. And so we have built that capability. And the thing that's most exciting about this is that this is going to be so much faster because you do not have to set up decision trees and so on, right? You can take process documents, we can automatically convert them into guidance, automatically. You can take content which is long form, 100-page PDF, not a problem. We can reason over it, and we can do all that for 25 cents a conversation. Now, I know some other companies have launched solutions out there. but they're a little more expensive, and they're not as comprehensive. So we're very excited about this. We will make it generally available in January, but now we are opening it up for beta. It's being demoed. You can sign up for the beta. I urge you to take a look and see if this is something that would help you on the front end of this AI knowledge experience.